What started as an ordinary night, driving through familiar roads, working through another lonely shift, soon unraveled into a series of events that would haunt anyone who dared step into the darkness. From mysterious disappearances in the woods to chilling footsteps echoing in empty halls, tonight's stories will pull you into the unknown and leave you questioning what's real and what's something much darker. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another spine-chilling episode of Night Terrors. I'm your host, and tonight we've got a collection of terror that's bound to keep you up long after the lights go out. These tales are rooted in the mundane, work, deliveries, a quiet office. But what happens when the ordinary is shattered by the unexplainable? Prepare yourselves for tales of twisted encounters, ghostly figures, and uninvited guests from the other side. Before we dive into the shadows, make sure you hit that like button and share your own eerie experiences in the comments below, or send your real-life horror stories to nightterror@xinbox@gmail.com. We love hearing from you, and who knows, your story could haunt us all in a future episode. Now, turn off the lights, lock your doors, and get ready to experience a darkness that's all too real. The Stranger Who Waited. So I was talking to my cousin one night, and he told me something I'll never forget. He said, "You ever have that moment when you realize someone's been watching you for a lot longer than you thought?" At first, I just laughed it off, but after what happened to me, that question hits a lot different now. This was back when I was working the night shift at this 24-hour sandwich joint just off a quiet highway outside a small Midwestern town. It wasn't anything special. Barely enough business to justify keeping the lights on past midnight. But somehow, it stayed open around the clock. I was in my mid-20s, kind of in that drifting phase of life, and the solitude actually felt like a break from everything. Most nights I was the only one there after 9 p.m., and I liked it that way. I'd make a few late-night melts for some tired truckers or college kids heading home from parties, clean up, scroll my phone, wait for the clock to crawl past 5 a.m. It was a Tuesday, dead as ever. I took over from the day guy at 9 p.m., prepped the back, turned on the overheads, and waited. The first couple hours were uneventful. A couple of walk-ins, a sleepy delivery to some dude who looked like he hadn't slept in days. By midnight, things went still. Around 1:10 a.m., I heard the ding above the front door, a little bell that rings when someone comes in. I got up, walked into the dining area, and nothing. No customer, no wind gust, nobody on the sidewalk outside. I even checked the motion sensor behind the counter, but it hadn't triggered. I stood there a bit longer, chuckled to myself, and chalked it up to me zoning out so hard that I imagined it. You get so used to hearing background noise that sometimes your brain just fills in the blanks, right? 15 minutes later, ding. This time, I knew I wasn't imagining it. I'd just put my phone down. The bell was real. I came out again, empty, no footsteps, no shadows, just that gross yellow glow from the flickering sign outside and the hum of a soda machine. Now I was starting to feel weird, not scared, just off. I pushed the door open, peeked outside. Dead street, empty lot, not even a raccoon sniffing around. I even tested the bell to see if it might be loose or glitching. Nope. Worked fine. Only rang when the door moved. Still, I waited up front for a while. Nothing happened. No ding, no door. Just silence. At about 2:45 a.m., I gave up and went back to the prep area. A few minutes later, ding. I didn't even move this time. I just sat there, listening. No footsteps, no voices, just that unsettling quiet that seems to get heavier when you're expecting a sound that never comes. "Hello?" I called out, trying to sound casual. Nothing. I stayed put, heart thumping, every hair on my arms standing up like static. An hour passed. Not a single customer, not even a prank call. It was now 4:01 a.m. and I was just grateful my shift was almost done. I walked up front to tally the register, and that's when it really hit me. Something was wrong. It was the kind of unease that sinks in, not all at once, but like slow dripping water. I kept glancing toward the big front windows, then back at the narrow hallway behind the kitchen. My skin crawled. I don't even know why. I hadn't seen anything, but it felt like something was seeing me. Then I heard it, a single heavy step behind me, like a boot on tile. I spun around so fast I nearly knocked over the stool. There, just a few feet behind the counter, stood a man. He was dressed in dark layers, ripped jeans, torn hoodie with the hood pulled down low. But it wasn't his clothes that chilled me. It was his eyes, wide, bloodshot, vacant. Like he wasn't even seeing me, just staring through me. Like I wasn't a person, just something in his way. And in his left hand, he held a long, serrated hunting knife. Not some kitchen thing. This was personal. I froze. My voice came out shaky. "Look, man, take the cash. I don't care. Just don't hurt me." I even held my hands up, stepping slowly back toward the counter, hoping he'd take the money and go. He didn't move, not a twitch. He just kept squeezing that knife like it was the only thing holding him together. I was trapped. The layout of the counter meant that to run, I'd have to go toward him, then around and out. He was way too close. I knew if I made one wrong move, I'd never make it. So I did something stupid, or maybe brilliant. I vaulted over the damn counter like a linebacker, slammed into the linoleum hard enough to knock the air from my lungs, scrambled to my feet. And that's when he charged. I swear to you, his face twisted into something feral, not angry, not even human, just pure primal violence. I sprinted out the front door. I could hear him right behind me, heavy boots slamming the pavement. I didn't even aim for my car. It was parked around the back, no time. I bolted straight to the main road, praying for headlights, sirens, anything. Then suddenly, nothing. No footsteps, no breath behind me. I risked a glance back. He was gone. I called 911 and waited by the side of the road, heart ready to explode. The cops showed up within minutes. When they searched the shop, they found it trashed, tables overturned, sauce containers smashed like they'd been stepped on. And my car? Deep, jagged scratches carved into the side door, like someone dragged a knife across it, slow and deliberate. They figured he must have been watching me for hours, maybe from the edge of the lot, maybe through the back window. He'd used the door as bait, lured me out, waited for me to stop checking. And at some point, he got in. Probably during that silent hour, I thought nothing was happening. He could have been behind the shelves, crouched in storage, just watching. They never found him. No prints, no ID, nothing. But here's the part that keeps me up sometimes. When I think back to the way he stared at me, it didn't feel random. He didn't look like someone who just snapped. He looked like someone who'd been waiting. And I can't help but wonder, waiting for what? Or worse, for who? Don't ever follow the firelight. A friend of mine, Jake, told me this after we went camping last fall. We were swapping creepy stories by the fire, and he leaned in and said, "Okay, this one isn't a story. This really happened to me. So Jake used to work 2 jobs, his main 9-to-5 office grind, and then late-night food deliveries just to scrape together enough cash to move out of his cramped apartment. He said those delivery runs were usually boring, maybe a little lonely, but nothing ever really happened. Until one night, everything changed. It was a Thursday in late October, just cold enough that you could see your breath, but not quite winter. Jake had already done a solid shift and figured he'd grab a couple more deliveries before calling it. Around 11:30 p.m., he gets a ping, almost $20 for a single order, about 15 minutes away. He said it felt like a lucky break, like a little reward for putting in the extra grind. The address led him toward the outskirts of a town he'd lived in his whole life, but the road twisted into a wooded area he swore he'd never seen before. His GPS guided him to a gravel turnoff, past an open chain gate flanked by 2 stone pillars. The woods swallowed the road fast, and his headlights barely cut through the dark. He pulls into a small dirt lot and parks, confused because there's no house in sight. Just trees, and a wooden sign half lit by his headlights that read Red Hollow Nature Preserve. No lights, no people. He figures maybe the customer's car camping or something. Weird, but not unheard of. Just as he's about to call the number on the order, his phone starts buzzing. Jake answers, and the voice on the other end is off. Gravelly, deep, like someone chewing on their own words. The guy says, "You parked, right? You should be able to see our fire from there." Jake looked around, nothing but black trees and shadows. "I don't see anything," he told him. The guy replies, "Just walk a little down the path. You'll see the glow. We're camped just off the trail. Got the cash for you too." Now Jake's not a wilderness guy, but $20 is $20, and the guy claimed the preserve allowed overnight camping on weekends. It sounded legit enough. Jake grabs the food bag and steps out, immediately feeling how unnaturally quiet everything was. No chirping bugs, no rustling leaves, just the wind and his own footsteps. He followed a narrow trail lit by his phone's flashlight. Then he saw it, a soft orange glow flickering between the trees. But the weird part? The light wasn't on the trail. It was deeper in the woods, like off the beaten path entirely. And as he stepped closer, he realized he couldn't hear anything you'd expect near a campsite. No laughing, no talking, just that eerie, lonely flame. When he finally got near enough to see it clearly, his stomach dropped. There was no tent, no coolers, no sleeping bags, just a single fire burning quietly in the dirt. Jake whispered to himself, "Where the hell is everybody?" And that's when he heard it, a sharp snap from somewhere in the dark, like a branch breaking. He spun around, heart pounding, and in the farthest edge of his phone light, he saw a figure standing still, way too still, like whoever it was had been watching him and didn't want to be seen. Trying not to freak out, Jake raised his voice. "Hey, I've got your food. I'll just leave it here." He set the bag down slowly, eyes on the figure. That's when the man started moving, deliberate steps, just slow enough to make Jake's skin crawl. Tall, dark clothes, a rough beard. It was the voice from the phone, no doubt. But up close, the guy looked wrong, like he was pretending to be human and not quite pulling it off. His grin stretched too wide. His eyes didn't blink. "Sorry, didn't see you there," the man rasped. Jake mumbled something back, took a step backward, then another. Every instinct screamed, "Run!" The guy kept walking forward, tone sugary and fake now. "Don't you want your tip? I've got cash for you. Come on back, man." Jake turned and bolted, crashing through low branches, barely keeping his footing. The man's voice followed him, calling out in that weirdly pleasant tone, like he was inviting Jake to a backyard barbecue. He made it to his car, fumbling his keys in the dark, hands trembling. As soon as the engine roared to life, he threw it in reverse, heart thudding against his ribs. But when he reached the exit, the chain was up, strung tight between the pillars like it had never been down. He swore it had been open. He drove through it. Jake stared at it, trying to figure if he should get out and unlatch it, but then... footsteps behind the car. Crunch, crunch, slow, getting closer. He didn't look, didn't want to see. Just slammed the gas and jerked the wheel. His tires tore up the grass as he squeezed around the stone pillars, barely missing a ditch that could have stranded him there for good. He didn't stop until he hit the main road, breathing like he'd run a marathon, hands clutching the wheel until they hurt. The next day, Jake checked the preserve online. Red Hollow, closed at 8 p.m., no overnight camping allowed, no fire pits, nothing. And the number he had for the customer? Disconnected. Jake still doesn't know what that man wanted, or what would have happened if he hadn't run. But he swears to this day, the worst part wasn't the fire or the man or the footsteps. It was that chain, because someone put it back up, and that means whoever, or whatever, was out there with him, had planned for him to never leave. The Midnight Intruder. So I was talking to a friend of mine, Greg, the other night, and he told me something that I'll never forget. It was about his job working the overnight shift at a small, isolated warehouse. At first, it sounded like the typical boring job you'd expect. But what happened to him that night? Let's just say he won't be looking at his workplace the same way again. Greg worked at a data center out in the middle of nowhere, just past the outskirts of town. It was an old warehouse-like building, with trees creeping up behind it, giving it a dark and ominous vibe, especially at night. His job was simple: monitor the systems, make sure everything was online, and if anything went wrong, just head to the operating rooms and reset the systems. The problem? He was there alone. And for a guy who thrived on being busy, this job was mind-numbing. It wasn't unusual for him to sit there for hours, just staring at a screen, binge-watching Netflix to pass the time. So one night, Greg clocked in at 10 p.m., same as usual. The place was quiet, as it always was. No cars, no people, just him and the hum of the machines. After giving the systems a quick check, he set up his laptop and started watching the latest show he'd been obsessed with. He didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. This was just another slow shift. But about 2 hours in, the silence was broken by a notification on his screen. One of the systems had lost connection. Nothing major, just the typical glitch. So he paused his show and made his way downstairs to the main hub. The warehouse was a labyrinth of hallways and aisles, filled with rows of giant shelves. The section that had gone down was all the way in the back, in the far corner. When Greg reached the area, he immediately saw the issue. The heavy-duty power cable had somehow come loose, lying in a tangled mess on the floor. It was strange. He'd never seen something like that happen before. It was almost as if it had been pulled out, not just dislodged by a vibration or something. But he figured it was a fluke, plugged it back in, and waited for the system to reboot. Everything was back online, no big deal. He made a quick check of the other sections, but everything else was running fine. He headed back to his office, thinking he'd be back to watching his show in no time. That's when he heard it, a faint thumping sound, like a heavy door slamming shut, echoing through the otherwise silent hall. It was unsettling, especially since he knew there were no doors in that part of the building, or at least none that should be making that kind of noise. Greg brushed it off at first. The building was old, after all. Sometimes the pipes would groan and creak in the walls, or the metal framework would bend with the temperature change. But this sound was different, like it came from an area of the warehouse he didn't recognize. He returned to the office and sat back down. A few minutes passed, and he barely got through a single scene when he heard it again. Fast footsteps, scurrying through the hallway just outside his door. It was sudden and loud enough to make his heart race. "Hello?" he called out, opening the door and peering down the corridor. Nothing. It was empty, just the long stretch of hallway, and the door at the far end. The footsteps had sounded so close, though. He decided to take a look. But when he reached the end of the hall, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The door at the far end slowly creaked closed, as if someone had just slipped inside. Greg's breath caught in his throat. "Hello? Is someone there?" His voice echoed through the building, but all he got was silence in return. He stepped cautiously into the hallway, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. The hallway ahead was lined with office doors, and the place felt more like a maze now than just an empty warehouse. He wasn't alone. He took a few more steps, but as he neared one of the office doors, it suddenly swung open, revealing a flash of movement, someone darting out from the shadows. Greg didn't think twice. He spun around and sprinted back down the hallway, his pulse hammering in his ears. His footsteps were louder now, echoing behind him as he ran. His mind was racing. Who was that? Why were they in here? He couldn't take any chances. He veered off into another hallway and found the staircase. He didn't even hesitate before pushing through the fire exit and bolting outside into the parking lot, his heart still pounding in his chest. Out of breath, Greg fumbled for his phone and dialed 911. "I don't know who's in there, but someone's inside the building," he gasped. The cops arrived in a flash. They combed through the entire warehouse for what felt like forever, but there was no sign of anyone. Whoever it was, they were gone. It wasn't until the next day that Greg put everything together. The disconnected cable that had been in the same section where the intruder had probably been lurking. He must have bumped into it while sneaking around. The company launched an investigation, reviewing security footage and trying to figure out how the person had gained access. But Greg, well, he wasn't authorized to know the details. The whole experience left him shaken. Whoever had been in there, they were hiding something. And for all he knew, they were planning to do a lot more than just sneak around in the dark. And now, every time Greg drives past that warehouse, his mind races back to that night. The strange sound, the footsteps, the man running through the corridors. He doesn't know what would have happened if he hadn't left when he did. But one thing's for sure, he'll never look at that building the same way again.